Good morning, everybody. This is Gary Duke, and we're right back here at Straightforward Therapeutics. We have been talking about hope for the troubled mind, and we have launched into the subject of anxiety. And this particular subject I'm somewhat acquainted with. If you've ever had anybody that's close to you that struggled with anxiety, then you know how debilitating it is. It's not just debilitating for the person who is struggling with panic attacks or whatever, but it's really debilitating for the entire family, people that are close to them, because it affects them. And if you're a parent and it's your child, you feel extremely helpless and powerless to give them what they need in order to soothe them and help them to feel safe. And if you're the person experiencing the panic attack or anxiety attack, it is a very scary experience, very scary. And you do feel powerless, and you feel like a victim of something that you really can't fight on your own. And today, what I'd like to do is to try to take the panic out of panic attacks, if I could. As a counselor, I think I said in the last session, I wish I had like a wand or something that I could, wave, or a word that I could give that would cause things just to go away in people's lives so that they're not suffering and struggling in areas such as this. But obviously we don't have that. But I do have a word that might help you, and that is, you are not powerless. You may feel powerless, but you're not powerless. I was thinking about a lady that I counseled a number of years ago, and she had a daughter that was afflicted, and the girl was eventually going to die, but there was no telling how long. I mean, it was one of those long, slow illnesses that was eventually going to take her life. And her greatest fear was that she was not going to be there when her daughter needed her most, at the very end. And she started having a lot of separation anxiety and started having panic attacks. So much so that she had to quit her job. She basically was homebound. She was not really able to hardly go anywhere because she was afraid that if she left, that her daughter would need her and that she wouldn't be there for her, and she would go into a panic attack. And she lived in a different state, and I wasn't licensed in that state or anything. And she wanted to get some counseling, and she would not drive across the state line to where my office was, because it was just too far away from her home. She couldn't leave her home, and so there was a park that was nearby, and I said, well, I won't charge you. I'm not licensed in your state, but I'll be happy to visit with you. And I said, but I'm not going to come to your house. And I said, so do you think you could, leave your house, long enough to meet me at this city park? And the city park was just basically just half a block away from her house. And she said, yeah, she would do that. So we started meeting at a picnic table there, and I just started trying to help her in whatever way I could. And I don't know where, I got this idea, but as we were talking, and man, I felt so bad for her because she was struggling so much. And the loss of her job created financial difficulties, and she just was a very miserable person, she wasn't happy at all. And I said, let me ask you a question. I said, if you were to try to start a panic attack, an anxiety attack, do you think you could do that? And she thought for a second. She said, oh, definitely, absolutely. And I said, you think you could create one? Oh, in a heartbeat. All I have to do is just start thinking the wrong thing, and it would bring one on. And for whatever reason, I know this is not a cure-all, okay? But for whatever reason, the thought came to me, and I said, if you can start one, do you think you could, if you had the power to start one, don't you think you had the power to stop one? And it was kind of like a light went off in her face, and she thought, and she said, I never thought about that. And because anxiety attacks, you feel like such a victim. You just feel so powerless. There's nothing you feel like you can do to change what's happening. And so it gave her that glimmer of hope that it was not a useless situation. It was not hopeless. It was not hopeless. That's the word I was looking for. But that there was still hope, that there was something that she could do about it. And that was an open door where she began to start taking control back of her life little by little. Her daughter did eventually pass away, but before her daughter passed away, she had already gotten back to the place to where she could go back to work and was living a fairly normal lifestyle. And so there's a lot of things about anxiety attacks that create beliefs. I personally think that they're more than anything. Of course, there's a lot of things that can trigger it. If you had a lot of trauma in your past, as a child, or even as an adult, and something can trigger that. A smell, a sound, the way somebody looks, somebody getting too close to you, whatever. I mean, there's a lot of things that can create that reaction that creates that panic attack. And so there's no one thing that we can really nail down. I think about environmental things that have taken place. Whether it's a really strict, religious, rigid background where there are things that are, fear has gotten into somebody's mind because of things that they've been taught from their religious upbringing. Feeling, that you have to be perfect, and, that perfectionistic mentality that creates that sense of everything needing to be just right. And if it's not, then things kind of go haywire. But a lot of it is based on an irrational belief. Albert Ellis was a theorist who came up with the rational emotive behavioral theory, and Mr. Ellis identified 11 irrational beliefs that he really felt like that people were holding on to, which was creating mental health difficulties. And so, like, for example, all or nothing thinking. All or nothing thinking means that, you're either a hero or a zero. You're either on top or you're a flop. Either everything's perfect or it's horrible. That's irrational, because that's not the world we live in. We live in, we don't operate in black and white. We operate in the gray. Nobody is at the top of the pinnacle, and nobody is at the bottom of the pile. We're all in there somewhere together in the middle. And so it's irrational for us to expect that. Mind reading is another one, where we are so certain that we know what people are thinking and how they perceive us, etc. And, or fortune telling, so to where we are sitting there and believing that we know how things are going to turn out, even though they haven't happened yet, which is irrational, because we're not able to tell the future. And so if we're not careful, we let that belief system trigger something inside of us, catastrophizing, where we are making the very worst case scenario out of something that is occurring. So, if I lose my job, I start going into a panic attack, because I think, man, I'm going to lose my car. I'm going to lose my house. My kid's not going to go to college. We're not going to have food to put on our table. I'm a horrible provider. What am I going to do? I'm not going to be able to get a job. Within a moment's time, a person can really slip into some pretty severe panic, when nothing has happened yet that really creates that, other than the fact that you lost your job, but this belief system is creating this anxiety. And so I think a lot of times what we need to do is challenge our beliefs, challenge them. Another thing about anxiety attacks, as horrible as they are, they're not deadly. People don't die from panic attacks. A lot of times they think they're having a heart attack from an anxiety attack, and people end up in the emergency room because they feel like they're having a heart attack or something. But honestly, panic attacks are not deadly. They don't last forever. They do pass, and there are people that have suffered with anxiety attacks for a long period of time. But generally, if you go get counseling, if you address the issue, it's not something that can't be dealt with, and it's not something that can't be taken out of your life altogether. So it's not a hopeless situation. In the midst of a panic attack, there's not a situation to where you can't do anything about it. You can begin to use imagery, or you can breathing techniques and things. And if you've struggled with this, this because you've already gotten that far in your walk and your journey with that. And so there's things that you can do to de-escalate what's going on, and realize that if I do start to have an anxiety attack, that there is a response that I can do that will help somewhat, and bring it back down to a manageable level. Prayer is a great thing. Prayer is the most therapeutic tool there is, in my opinion. Okay. And so the peace of God passes understanding, and just quoting a verse does not make it go away. But there is truth in the Word of God. There are a lot of passages that have to do with peace and calmness, and dealing with that. I was looking at a couple of them here, where it says, "I will keep you in perfect peace, who trust in me. All those whose thoughts," I'm sorry. In the NLT, in Isaiah 26:3, it says, "You will keep in perfect peace all who trust in you, all whose thoughts are fixed on you." So there's a key there. What are our thoughts fixed on? And like I was saying, a lot of it has to do with our belief system, and what we're telling ourselves, and what we're buying into, and what we're allowing to permeate our brain, and what we're sitting there thinking about is really something that really has to be addressed. We have to control our thoughts. Remember, emotions, when they're in control of our thoughts, generally that goes haywire. And so and that's really what it is with a panic attack, is your emotions are driving your thoughts and your behavior. And so in order to address that, we have to take control back over our thoughts. I like using imagery. If you can just close your eyes and start picturing in your mind something that brings you back down to a comfortable level. And one of my favorite images that I've employed with people who are struggling with this is like being in a department store and walking up to an escalator that's going down, and picturing yourself slowly stepping out on that first step, taking hold of that black rubber guardrail, and feel yourself slowly descending down, further down to the next landing. Picture yourself being on that escalator, stepping off that landing, turning to your left and seeing another escalator going down to the next floor, and picturing yourself slowly stepping out onto that step, slowly descending down. That imagery of just feeling yourself descending like that, a lot of times will bring some real calmness to you, to where you start just to feel your body. The other thing is, when you're having an anxiety attack, usually you're breathing from your chest. Anytime you breathe from your chest, it's going to create anxiety. That goes along with anxiety. Okay. So bringing your breathing down to your stomach. If you try that right now, the difference between breathing from your chest to breathing from your stomach, you can just feel the calmness. It immediately changes the way your body is feeling. starting with muscle tension and releasing. If you lie down on a couch and you start with your toes and you clench your toes and then just release them slowly and feel the muscle relax. Same thing with your foot. You push your foot forward and you press those muscles until they're tense, and then you let them off. Work your way all the way up your body, all the way up to your eyebrows, your forehead, just relaxing your body. There's a couple of things that happens when you do that. You're dealing with your breathing, you're dealing with your muscle tension. Okay, that's going to bring your heart rate down. You're thinking about something specifically that is not panic driven. And so like basically it's kind of a holistic attack to that panic attack, because you're taking charge of your mental, your physical, your breathing, you're relaxing your muscles. It's definitely a big plus. Like I say, if you've dealt with panic attacks, you probably know this. I'm probably not telling you something you don't know. My daughter has dealt with anxiety, and one of the things that really helped her for a good while, I don't know if she still uses it or not, is a weighted blanket. And it's very calming and soothing. And, it can be something that can help as well, especially at night when you sleep and whatever. She said she slept so good with that. And there's a lot of things that you can do, but the thing that I'm trying to get across today is that we need to take the panic out of the panic attack. Okay, it is a very uncomfortable feeling, and it is a debilitating situation, but you are not totally powerless. You don't have to be the victim. There is something you can do to change it. And so I would encourage you, get in counseling to where you can figure out why. As I've said many times before, the whys don't fix something, but they really help you to understand what's going on and maybe understand what you need to fix. Okay. And so a lot of times you can't do that on your own. You need some help. And so get into counseling, let somebody work with you and find out really what's the root of that belief that's springing up, that's causing this situation, and start taking the means to address it. And so I hope today's session is a little bit helpful. I feel powerless in really changing a lot that's going on in people's lives. But, sometimes it's just a little nugget of truth that really kind of makes a difference sometimes. And so hopefully it's helpful, and we'll talk about something next time. And so I hope that you have a great day today. God bless you.